On the morning of June 17, 1940, a single armoured division was about to do something no military force in history had ever accomplished, and the man driving it forward would soon earn a nickname that still echoes through military history: the Ghost Division, so fast and so untraceable that even the German High Command sometimes lost track of where it was. Erwin Rommel, a 50-year-old infantry officer who had spent the previous war crawling through the mountains of Italy rather than racing across open ground in a tank, had taken command of the 7th Panzer Division only months earlier, and in the 5 weeks since the invasion of France began, he had already proven himself the most aggressive, most unpredictable commander on the entire Western Front, a man who treated maps as suggestions and supply lines as someone else's problem. By the 3rd week of June, France was collapsing. The Wehrmacht had shattered the Allied front along the Meuse, surged through the supposedly impenetrable Ardennes, and driven a wedge so deep into northern France that entire armies found themselves cut off, disoriented, retreating toward ports they hoped might still be open. Paris had fallen days earlier. The French government was fracturing, soon to ask for an armistice. But south and west of the German spearheads, the French 10th Army, along with remnants of other shattered formations, was still attempting to organise a defence along the Normandy coast, hoping to hold a line, regroup, perhaps even evacuate through Cherbourg, the way the British had escaped through Dunkirk weeks before. Rommel had other plans. What happened on June 17 was not a single dramatic battle with a clear climax, but something almost stranger. A relentless, grinding, mechanized sprint across the French countryside that would push men and machines to the absolute edge of endurance. Rommel's division, built around Panzer 38T and Panzer II light tanks supported by motorized infantry, motorcycle reconnaissance troops and artillery, batteries dragged along at breakneck speed, began the day already deep inside French territory, and rather than pausing to consolidate, rather than waiting for orders from a high command that was struggling to keep pace with its own success, Rommel pushed his division forward in one continuous, unbroken advance. Tanks ran until their fuel tanks were nearly dry, then ran again after hasty refueling from columns of trucks struggling to keep up. Crews fought exhaustion as much as they fought any enemy, some men catnapping in 5-minute intervals during brief halts, others simply gritting their teeth and continuing through the night. The division did not stop to mop up resistance in the conventional sense. Small French units, militia formations and disorganized stragglers were bypassed, bewildered, left behind in a cloud of dust and diesel smoke, uncertain whether the war had already passed them by. By the time the sun set and rose again, Rommel's spearhead had covered approximately 240 kilometers, a staggering distance for any military formation in 1940. Let alone one hauling tanks, artillery, and thousands of men across roads never designed for such traffic. It was, by any reasonable measure, a world record for a single day's armoured advance, a distance that strained the very concept of what a division could do, and it placed Rommel's spearhead directly across the lines of retreat for the French 10th Army, slicing behind them before they fully understood the German forces were anywhere near. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical manoeuvre. French commanders, working with intelligence that was already hours or days out of date, simply could not conceive that an enemy armoured division could move with such speed. Reports of German tanks appearing dozens of kilometres behind what should have been the front line were initially dismissed as errors, exaggerations, or panic, only to be confirmed again and again as Rommel's forces appeared seemingly everywhere at once. This was the heart of Rommel's method, refined through weeks of campaigning. Speed itself became a weapon, disorientation became a force multiplier, and the enemy's confusion mattered as much as their casualties. The 7th Panzer Division reached the area around Cherbourg and the Cotentin Peninsula, severing the roads and rail lines the French 10th Army needed to escape, and in the days that followed, encircled French forces found themselves with dwindling options, caught between a coastline offering no clear evacuation and a German pincer that had arrived faster than anyone believed possible. Tens of thousands of French soldiers, along with remnants of supporting Allied units, would ultimately surrender as the campaign in this sector collapsed entirely, the victims not merely of superior firepower, but of a tempo of warfare that French doctrine, built on the cautious, methodical lessons of the previous war, had never been designed to counter. This was Blitzkrieg distilled to its purest form, Not simply tanks breaking through a line, but tanks exploiting a breakthrough with such relentless velocity that the enemy's entire system of command, communication, and coordinated response simply could not keep pace. Rommel himself moved with the lead elements rather than directing from the rear, exposing himself repeatedly to ambush and confusion in the chaotic, fluid battle space, a command style that unnerved his own staff as much as it baffled the French, and it was this same instinct for forward, personal leadership that would define his later, far more famous campaigns in the deserts of North Africa. The armistice ending the Battle of France was signed days later, and the campaign that had begun with the invasion of the Low Countries concluded in a stunning 6-week collapse of one of Europe's most powerful armies, a defeat whose shockwaves would shape strategic thinking for the rest of the war. The one-day sprint of June 17th was a single thread in that larger collapse, but it revealed something the rest of the conflict would only confirm again and again, that mobility, audacity, and the willingness to outrun your own logistics could shatter even a numerically formidable opponent. Before that opponent ever understood, the battle had truly begun. Rommel's record-setting advance was not merely a footnote of distance and speed, it was a preview of a new kind of warfare, one where the map itself became the weapon, and where the fastest mind on the battlefield, not simply the strongest army, decided who would win.